Morning.
So we're just starting to go live, everybody.
There's the number going up.
And we're live on Facebook.
Okay. Is everybody out of the waiting room, Jesse?
Yep, people are just
Okay.
joining now.
Fantastic. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Karen Fasell. I'm the president of the MRC Board of Directors, and we welcome you all to the latest in our installment of updates on the status of reopening the Hamden Waste Processing Facility. We wanted to thank you for your patience in this process. We know it's been quite an extended endeavor, much longer than any of us had hoped for or anticipated. But we did want to let you know that we greatly appreciate all of our members' support and patience throughout this process. We are walking a bit of a tightrope in trying to work on getting the plant reopened. We are continuing to work with DTE, Delta Thermal Energy, who has obviously has the most complete and proposal that's in progress, and they're very far along in the process of purchasing the plant. But at the same time, we have been making it very clear to them that our patience, our members' patience, the board's patience is getting very thin. We're looking forward to the coming winter, and we understand that there's things that need to happen at the plant to secure it again for winter time, and we need to get this process moving. So it's a balancing act. As always, we continue to look out and work for our members' best interest. Our goal is to handle the waste of our members and to meet our mission and goal, which is to do so in the most sustainable and cost-effective way possible. We do appreciate, as I said, all of you sticking with us through this process that has been going on longer than we anticipated. But I'm happy today to be able to have our folks here to provide an update. We're going to hear from MRC's Executive Director, Mike Carroll. We are going to hear from MRC's legal counsel, John Pottle, who works for Eaton Peabody, as well as our technical consultant, George Aronson of Commonwealth Resource Management Corporation. So without further ado, I will pass it over to them. I will let folks know that we are going to be taking questions and answers. We'll be using the Q&A feature. So feel free to type questions in there at any point. When they're done with their presentations, we will open it up and start taking and responding to those questions. So thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Karen. And thank you everyone for attending. As Karen said, we will have a brief slide presentation, provided members with an update and some background on the progress of the sale of the Hamden facility. I will start, and then we'll go to legal counsel, Jonathan Pottle, and then MRC's long-time technical consultant, George Aronson. At the end of the presentation, we will be doing the Q&A through the Zoom feature at the bottom of your screen. So let's begin. First slide, please. A quick view of what's been happening with the purchase of the Hamden facility since our last town hall. DTE Operations Vice President Zane Crowley has been at the Hamden site for about 2 months now, speaking with vendors and reviewing the current operations while working on improvement and efficiency plans. After final language in the sales agreement had been agreed upon, fundamental notices were sent out to members on May 3rd, making members aware of the fundamental matters. Members were given until June 2nd to respond if they wanted to request a members meeting regarding the fundamental matters. No members meeting was scheduled. However, MRC spoke directly with most of the members to answer any questions or concerns. With fundamental matters notice out with fundamental matters notice out, the clock is ticking for DTE. DTE sends the assets and purchase agreement, the APA, and corresponding documents out to a pool of financiers searching for the best financing deal for their company in mid-May. The final documents are with DTE's financer. Trustee and the MRC are currently waiting on DTE financer approval and to review a term sheet. Every week, the trustee and the MRC agree to extend for DTE the memorandum of understanding known as the MOU, which expired March 31st. Generally, if all seems to be in order, we extend the MOU 1 week at a time. Lately, some of the agreed upon terms with DTE keeping the facility in an idle state have fallen wayside, which bondholders have addressed with DTE. DTE has explained this was missed primarily due to logistics of where documents were being sent. DTE has told the trustee and the MRC that they will be taking care of this. DTE was informed that it could jeopardize the weekly extensions of the MOU as part of the conditions in the agreement. Delays. Why? We were supposed to have a closing in May and then another in June. DTE has not finalized its financing. After working closely with the trustee and being in the trenches of this project, it is my opinion that DTE thought securing funding for the purchase and the improvements of the Hamden facility was going to be much easier than it has proven for them. Presently, we are aware that DTE is discussing financing with their source, but no term sheet has been finalized or presented to the trustee or the MRC. Very recently, one financer provided the trustee and MRC with notification that they are working with DTE to consummate a deal and have disclosed the dollar amount of the deal, which is acceptable amount for DTE to purchase and operate the facility. But without seeing the term sheet, trustee and the MRC cannot confirm the rest of the terms outside of the financial capability. DTE has discussed in detail with the trustee and MRC some of the hurdles that they have been having with financing and why they are experiencing delays. DTE does not believe, DTE does believe they can overcome these hurdles and financing can be secured. They just need time. I will reiterate what Karen said. I will say the MRC was led to believe that funding would not be this difficult for DTE and the patience is running thin. We are getting the same feedback from the trustee, but no one is ready to throw in the towel yet as long as we continue to see progression. The message has also been relayed to DTE, but we have been reassured that they are doing everything they can to get this deal done. Moving forward, the MRC is its members. Every action is taken with the financial and environmental welfare of its members' communities in mind. This has been a balancing act, but we have always considered the members' interests first. We want to underscore that we remain stronger as an organization than as individuals. And while we continue to work with the bondholder trustee, council, consultants, our primary focus remains in the best interest of the members. So with that said, as long as the terms of the MOU are met and progression is made by DTE working towards a closing, then DTE should be able to close this deal, but the ball is in their court. That's all I have. Thank you. With that said, I'd like to turn the floor over to Jonathan Pottle from Eaton and Peabody, MRC's legal counsel.
Great, thank you, Mike, and good morning, everyone. So I'll be fairly brief in just going over some of the legal considerations for the purposes of this town hall. So as you can see on the slide, I'll touch upon kind of three themes. One is just the overall framework of the transaction that Mike was talking about. Also, just to remind everyone of MRC's role as part of that, and just to touch upon the current status of where we are. So in terms of the framework of the transaction, the owner of the facility is still Coastal Resources of Maine. It is their building, it's their equipment. Those are the principal assets. They remain the owners. The seller in the transaction is essentially a court-appointed receiver. Because Coastal Resources of Maine is in default with their financing agreement with the bondholders, as a secured creditor, the bondholders have the right to get a receiver appointed for the purpose of selling those assets that we're talking about. Again, principally the building and the equipment there in Hampton. The buyer, as Mike has noted, is DTE-HM. They are a special purpose entity. They're affiliated with Delta Thermal Energy. They have been identified as the buyer. As Mike has mentioned, they are going through the process of seeking to secure and obtain financing for the transaction. MRC's role, just to remind everyone, we essentially are the main or primary customer of the coastal facility. That's where the waste is contracted to go. And we're also the landlord. We own the property where that facility sits. So we have, two hats in that respect. When it comes to the transaction, well, MRC is not a seller. Our principal role is in the assignment of those contracts. The primary driving contracts are the site lease. That's as our role as the landlord, and the master waste supply agreement. That's in our role as the customer. And as I've mentioned before, those are the two contracts that really help facilitate a potential sale so the facility remains as a going concern. That's where the value really lies. Without those, the value of that facility drastically goes down, in my opinion. In terms of what the transaction is, it's an asset purchase agreement with corresponding agreements that all interrelate with each other. And again, MRC's role principally is in the assignment of those principal contracts under certain conditions that we've negotiated, all with the intent and all with the interest of the members to have a successful ramp up and reopening of the facility. In terms of the current status, I think Mike did a great job in describing that. When it comes to current status, as he mentioned, we were anticipating the closing. The last date was end of June 30th. Clearly that hasn't occurred. We are waiting to see whether or not Delta Thermal Energy and its affiliate DTE-HM will be successful in their financing. We will need to review documents that they may provide on that in order to keep the transaction going forward for the potential sale. But again, we still need to look at that in terms of current status. The MOU, as far as I understand, is still in place. We're still focused on moving forward. If financing is secured, we would move ahead with the asset purchase agreement. Again, as I mentioned, that would involve a court process to appoint a receiver. But in terms of current status, we're still waiting to see if sufficient finances can be secured and obtained in order to move that process forward. I will note, as a segue perhaps to George, that the MRC has also been, looking at alternative contingencies just in the event a closing doesn't occur. So just so the members are aware, we are looking at alternative contingencies just in case. It's just part of prudent, proper planning. As I've mentioned before, this is always a dynamic process. It evolves over time. We constantly review and evaluate where we are as a membership, as an organization, and again, doing and reacting and doing the best we can in the best interest of the members. So if you're looking for more details on the transaction itself, on the MRC's website, there is a memo, a 7-page memo. It's dated May 3rd, 2021. For those that might be interested in more details, there's an overview of the transaction contained on that memorandum on the website. And that will conclude my overview of legal considerations for the town hall. So thank you, Mike.
Next, we have George.
Okay. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, John. And I don't know that I'm going to give you a lot of new material in terms of options and next steps. To reiterate the prior position, the most expeditious pathway forward.
George, excuse me, George, can I ask you to speak a little bit closer to the microphone?
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, amazing what a little distance does. But I want to repeat the position. The most expeditious path towards reopening the facility is to continue to work with the bondholder trustee and Delta Thermo. The next step in that context involves confirmation that Delta Thermo can close on financing on the terms that are consistent with the MOU and the subsequent agreement that have already been negotiated. It's been mentioned that the confirmation's been delayed. You're impatient. We're impatient. You're tired of bypassing MSW to landfill disposal during delays. We're tired of bypassing MSW to landfill disposal during delays, and we don't want that to continue indefinitely or any longer than it has to. Nonetheless, where we are right now, until something changes, is that the most expeditious path forward is for the MRC to continue to work in good faith with the bondholder trustee and Delta Thermo. That's plan A. That being said, the MRC feels an obligation to let its members know that it is also discussing possible contingency arrangements with third parties in the event there is no closing of the transaction. Those discussions are, by necessity and circumstance, preliminary at this point, but there is reason for optimism. And I guess one thing I'll say in this area, the U.S. economy has picked up some steam in recent months. COVID, we're not entirely past COVID, and there have been some hiccups recently that are of concern, but we have made a lot of progress over the last year, and the economy is responding. This trickles down to the fact that the market for recyclable materials has also improved from where it was in 2020 when the Hamden facility suspended operations. And with that market comes improved demand, both for recovered plastics of all species and for cellulose pulp in national markets, and new initiatives to add processing capacity in the US. These are factors that are driving up the demand and prices of recycled commodities, and there's every indication that trend will continue, which is now it's very difficult at a time when, in fact, recyclables in some cases are not being collected, and we're aware of that. But these markets are dynamic. There are factors that change over time, and our hope is that as the markets pick up, that value will translate into better terms in which the facility, or a better and more favorable environment for the reopening of the facility. I will also say there's a new level of interest in what we'll call environmental, social, and governance investment, or ESG investment. That includes a new level of interest in investment in mixed waste processing technology and facilities, such as the Hamden facility. And those changes affect the sources and terms of financing that are available to Delta Thermo, and frankly, to others that might be interested under contingency arrangements in favorable ways. So I think the one piece that I'm adding to the discussion that others mentioned is that we are seeing improvement in the environment in which we are looking to reopen the facility, and that's helpful. So regarding next steps, all I can say is the MRC is monitoring those sources and terms closely. We're hoping they can be brought to fruition quickly. And again, thank you for the opportunity for continuing. I'll turn it back to Mike.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, thank you all, Mike and George and John, for those comments. I just wanted to remind folks that we will be taking questions. You can use the Q&A feature that should be at the bottom of your screen to log any questions or comments you might have. We do have one right now that I'll read and see if we have somebody who can respond to it. This is from Larry Sikora. Fiberite had a performance bond. DTE will have a similar performance bond. What was the result of Fiberite's bond when it defaulted on its performance? What value is such a bond?
John, can you take that one?
Yeah, I'll take a cut at it, and I'll premise my comment on, I was not directly involved with Fiber Rights original financing, but my understanding, and if I'm incorrect on this, someone can tell me, I'm not aware that there is a performance bond that Fiber Right and/or Coastal had, at least in any way that it would involve the MRC. For the transaction that we're talking about here with Delta Thermal Energy, which is again summarized to some degree and detailed in that memo I mentioned, there is a performance bond component to it. In part, in the event there is another one that can be experienced, there is another vehicle to reach to help address some of the issues with the plant if it should go down in terms of operations. But to my knowledge, there wasn't a performance bond for the coastal facility, at least not one that involved the municipal review committee.
Yes, John, that was my understanding too. That's why I handed it off to you. And the one thing that we did in this negotiation, which was what the MRC had requested, was that a performance bond be put in this time.
Thank you. We have another question here from Dean Blaha. I was under the impression DTE gave a presentation recently outlining their progress with financing. Is that presentation or recording available on the MRC website? I think I can address this one. I believe, well, we had originally posted this meeting as DTE addressing members and talking about the status of their purchase. But we did change that just because they had not made the progress that we had anticipated on their financing. So we felt it was premature for them to address the members directly. So I believe that's perhaps what you were referring to. Would you agree with that, Mike?
Yes, yes. I think that's our very first notice that we sent out. The intention was to have DTE present, but where we haven't seen the final documentation yet, then we had changed the format to what we're doing now.
Yeah, and we do intend, once we do get to that more final stage, to bring them before you all so you can hear more directly from DTE. All right, we've got another question here. Can you remind people to ask questions on Facebook too, if they want to comment there? That's a good point. We have 7 people watching. So folks on Facebook, yes, we will be able to see questions if you have them. Feel free to log them in there in the comment field and look at those brought to our attention. Does anybody else have any questions or comments they would like to make? I'll reiterate that we do anticipate coming back to you all, hopefully in the near future, and there won't be as long of a gap between addresses to provide you updates. So we would anticipate probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks having a similar meeting to provide you information on the progress, hopefully positive news on the status of the financing. Let's see, do we have anything else that's come in? Eric Jarvie has asked, please expand on what is involved in winterization. I don't know if that's a Mike or a George question on what might need to happen this coming winter to preserve the plant, in addition to what happened last winter.
So I can answer that. So this plant was designed to run 24/7. And there's a lot of outdoor plumbing, and we were able, or the bondholder trustee was able, to winterize that with something that it's a lot more technical term, but it's more or less heat tape where the plant wasn't running and stuff was flowing through that. So the major part of all that did get completed. It's not just a one-time use. It's something that's there for this winter also. But of course, there's also these blankets that went over the tanks and that are still on the tank. So some of those blankets would need to be readjusted and fixed. The heating tape would need to be plugged in and tested and make sure that that's working. And then of course the heat would need to be turned back on, which has a significant cost to it. So the tools needed and everything needed to winterize the plant has been done, but all that will need to be checked again and adjusted. And then, of course, the heat would need to be turned on. And those are the major concerns, is getting that done before winter and, of course, turning the heat on.
Thanks, Mike.
And Karen, I also just want to add, has been very good about sending constant contacts out as things develop. So of course, as smaller things develop, we'll continue to do that. And if there's any major changes, then we would probably notify, like you said, within the next 4 to 6 weeks and have another meeting. But we'll continue to send the constant contacts out as we get developments and any major develops. And of course, we would schedule it.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Question from John Main. I want to pass on my continued thanks for your very professional efforts in light of the difficulty and frustration you must face. Regards. Well, thank you very much, John, for your comments. Are always very positive. And we appreciate the encouragement. Sometimes it does feel like we're treading water, and we really want to see forward progress. We're all working towards that, and we're hopeful to be able to see some of that progress in the next week or two. I don't see any other questions or comments. Any members of the board like to make any comments or statements? All right, well, I see that we have no more comments and no more questions. So with that, I will close out this update town hall meeting and look forward to seeing you all again in the near future. And always, if you have any questions at any point throughout, you're welcome to address them to Mike Carroll by email or phone, or of course, reach out to any of the board members. All of our contact information is available on the MRC website. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.